The phone rang just as I was bringing the cup of tea to my lips. It was that perfect moment of the morning when the sun was barely beginning to slip through the lace curtains that I myself had embroidered 30 years ago. The light created golden patterns on the kitchen table, that worn wooden table where I had served thousands of breakfasts, where I had celebrated birthdays, where I had cried losses. My hands trembled slightly as I set down the cup. 82 years weigh on the bones, especially on cold mornings like that one. The tea spilled a little onto the white porcelain plate with blue flowers, the same set my husband gave me on our 20th anniversary. Only 3 complete cups remained. Time takes away so many things. Hello. My voice came out raspier than I expected. It was Valeria, my daughter. My heart gave a leap as it always did when I heard her voice, although it was no longer the leap of joy it used to be. Now there was something more, something that felt like a stone in my chest. "Mom," she said, and in that single word I could detect something: urgency, perhaps triumph, perhaps contempt. "I'm calling to let you know. We're leaving on a trip tomorrow. We used the money from your savings. Bye." The world stopped. It wasn't a dramatic stopping, like those seen in movies. It was more like someone had pressed a pause button on my life. The steam from the tea kept rising in delicate spirals. The wall clock kept ticking, that sound that had been the soundtrack of my life for decades. The radio kept murmuring morning news from the living room. My fingers squeezed the receiver so hard that my knuckles turned white. The blue veins in my hands became more pronounced, like rivers on a map of wrinkled skin. Each wrinkle told a story. The ones on my hands told stories of work, of washing clothes by hand when there was no money for laundry service, of cooking for 5 mouths with a budget that barely stretched for 3, of sewing until late at night to make costumes for my children for school plays. "I understand," I said finally, and my voice sounded strangely calm. "But you forgot something." There was a silence on the other end of the line. I could imagine her perfectly standing in her modern kitchen, that kitchen I could never have, with stainless steel appliances and granite countertops. She probably wore one of those elegant robes that cost what I earned in a month when I worked, her brown hair perfectly styled, her nails freshly done. My daughter had become someone I didn't recognize. "What are you saying?" she asked, and there was irritation in her voice, as if I were a nuisance, as if after stealing my savings, I didn't even have the right to speak. I laughed. It was a laugh that came from somewhere deep in my chest, a place where I kept all the disappointments, all the sorrows, all the sleepless nights, wondering where I had failed as a mother. It wasn't a bitter laugh, although I had every right for it to be. It was a laugh of irony, one of those that come out when reality is so absurd that there's no other option but to laugh. "The money you used," I said, savoring each word as if it were my last bite of food. "Actually," but I didn't finish the sentence immediately. I let the silence stretch out thick as honey. I could hear her breathing accelerate on the other end of the line. I could feel her confusion, perhaps her first glimpse of unease. I closed my eyes and let myself be carried away by memory. That money, those savings I had kept for years, each bill had a story, each coin represented a sacrifice. I remembered the first time I opened that savings account, almost 40 years ago. Valeria was 7 years old then. She was a sweet girl, with an easy smile and bright eyes that looked at everything with wonder. She used to climb onto my lap and ask me to tell her stories. I would invent tales of princesses and dragons while braiding her hair, feeling the warm weight of her little head against my chest. Where had that girl gone? The bank smelled of old paper and ambition. It was a small building in the town center, with marble floors that were always cold. I wore my best dress, although best is a relative term when your wardrobe consists of 3 dresses you've mended more times than you can count. The manager, a chubby man with a mustache and vest, looked at me with condescension when I told him I wanted to open a savings account. "How much do you want to start with?" he asked me, clearly expecting me to say a ridiculous amount. "With 20 pesos, I replied, raising my chin. Those 20 pesos I had earned cleaning houses for 2 weeks. He smiled smugly, but opened the account. He didn't know then, that arrogant man with his expensive suit and contemptuous look, that this humble woman before him was going to deposit money in that account every month for 40 years, without fail. Not once. 20 pesos became 50. 50 became 100. Sometimes I could only deposit 10, when times were especially hard, but always there was a deposit. Did Valeria know this? Did she know that each peso in that account represented a meal I didn't eat so she could eat? Did she know that each bill was a whim I denied myself, a new dress I never bought, a vacation I never took? My husband, may God rest his soul, died when Valeria was 15, a massive heart attack while fixing the roof of the house. I found him up there, among the red tiles, with an expression of surprise frozen on his face, as if death had caught him off guard, in the middle of an ordinary thought about whether he should replace 3 tiles or 4. After his funeral, a modest ceremony with flowers from the garden because there was no money for expensive wreaths, I stared at that savings account like a shipwrecked person looks at a raft. I had a little over 5,000 pesos then. I could have used them. God knows I needed that money. The hospital debts, funeral expenses, the house mortgage. But I didn't touch it. Because that money had a purpose. It was for Valeria, for her education, for her future, for the day she really needed it. So I went back to work, got a second job cleaning offices at night. I slept 4 hours if I was lucky. My hands cracked from chlorine and cleaning chemicals. My back hurt so much that there were nights I couldn't get out of bed without help. But I kept depositing money in that account. Month after month, year after year. Valeria grew up. She became beautiful, my girl, tall and slender, with her father's hair and my small nose. She was intelligent too. She got good grades without much effort. Teachers told me at parent meetings that she had potential, that magic word that made my heart swell with pride. Your daughter could go to university, her literature teacher once told me, a young woman with glasses and a serious expression. She has talent for writing, but she would need support, of course. University isn't cheap. That night, I counted the money in my savings account. There were more than 20,000 pesos. It wasn't enough, but it was a start. I would work harder, sleep less, whatever was necessary. I told Valeria about my plan that same week. We were having dinner, just the two of us at that table that now seemed too big without my husband. I had made rice with beans, the same dish we had eaten thousands of times. Sometimes I could afford to add a little chicken, but not that week. Valeria, my love, I said, taking her hand across the table. I've been saving for your university. She looked up from her plate. In her eyes I saw something I didn't know how to interpret. Then, now, with the weight of years and experience, I recognize what it was. Indifference. I don't know if I want to go to university, Mom, she said, withdrawing her hand. It's boring. Besides, Marcos says I don't need it. Marcos, the boyfriend. A 23-year-old boy with a noisy motorcycle and a smile that hid too many things. He worked in a mechanic's shop and perpetually smelled of motor oil and cigarettes. I couldn't stand him, although I tried to hide it. A mother knows when a man isn't good for her daughter. You know it in your gut, in that deep place where maternal intuition lives. Marcos doesn't understand, I said, trying to keep my voice calm. Education is important. It's your future. My future is what I decide it to be, she replied, and there was an edge in her voice that cut me. Not what you decide for me. She got up from the table without finishing her dinner, and went to her room. I heard the door slam. I heard the volume of her music rise to levels that made the walls vibrate. I was left alone in the kitchen, looking at her half-finished plate, feeling my eyes fill with tears I refused to shed. But I kept saving. Valeria didn't go to university. She married Marcos 3 months after graduating from high school. It was a small wedding at City Hall. She wore a white dress we bought at a secondhand store. I tried to smile in the photos, but when I look at them now, I can see the sadness in my eyes. The photographer captured something I was trying to hide, the knowledge that my daughter was making a mistake, and my absolute powerlessness to stop her. The marriage lasted 6 years. 6 years of sporadic visits, of increasingly infrequent calls, of excuses about why they couldn't come for Sunday dinner. Marcos didn't want me around. That was evident, and Valeria, my sweet Valeria, had chosen her side. When they finally divorced, I thought I would get my daughter back. I thought she would come back to me, that she would recognize I had been right, that we would reconcile. How foolish I was. How naive. Instead, Valeria went further away. She met Roberto at a real estate conference. Roberto was everything Marcos wasn't: educated, polished, successful. He wore expensive suits and drove a German car. He had investments and properties. He was, in Valeria's words, someone who's going places. They married a year after meeting. This time it was a big wedding at a luxurious downtown hotel. I attended alone, wearing the same dress from the first marriage because I didn't have money for another. I sat in the back of the church, watching my daughter walk down the aisle toward a man who barely looked her in the eyes. Roberto was too busy waving to his business partners, smiling for the cameras, making sure everything looked perfect for social media. At the reception, Valeria barely spoke to me. She was too busy being the perfect bride, smiling for photos, dancing with her new husband, thanking guests for expensive gifts. I stayed at my table, eating a piece of cake that tasted like cardboard in my mouth, watching my daughter shine in a world where I had no place. "Are you the mother?" an elegant woman who sat next to me asked. She wore a designer dress and jewelry that probably cost more than my house. "Yes," I replied. "I'm Valeria's mother." "You must be very proud," she said, with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Your daughter has married very well. Roberto is a man with resources." I nodded, not trusting my voice to respond. Proud? Should I be proud that my daughter had chosen a man for his bank account? That she had relegated me to a supporting role in her life, like an extra in her perfect movie? That night, after the wedding, I returned home alone. The bus was almost empty. Outside it was raining, one of those cold November rains that chill to the bone. When I arrived at my door, my shoes were soaked. My feet hurt. I was 80 years old then, and each of those years weighed like stones on my back. I took off my wet dress and put on my old robe, the soft flannel one with faded flowers. I made myself a cup of tea and sat in my chair by the window, watching the rain create rivers on the glass. And I cried. I cried for the girl I had lost, for the woman she had become, for the years we couldn't recover. But even after that, I kept saving. Why? Sometimes I asked myself on sleepless nights, why keep putting away money for a daughter who clearly didn't appreciate it, who didn't even visit me? The answer was simple and complex at the same time, because it was the only thing I knew how to do. Because despite everything, she was still my daughter. Because a mother's love doesn't go out like a candle. It burns even when there's no oxygen, even when everything is dark and cold. The years passed. Valeria and Roberto had 2 children. Beautiful children that I only saw in photos she posted on social media, Sebastian and Emma. My grandchildren. Children who didn't know my name, who didn't know my voice, who hadn't felt my arms around them. Once, 3 years ago, I took the bus to her house. It was a 2-hour trip. I carried gifts for the children, modest toys I had bought with my pension. Hand-painted wooden toys, the kind of things I used to make for Valeria when she was little. I rang the doorbell of her house, a modern mansion with perfectly manicured gardens and a fountain in front. Roberto opened the door. He looked at me the way you look at an unwanted door-to-door salesman. "Yes," he said, as if he didn't know me, as if I weren't the grandmother of his children. "I'm Elena," I said, my voice small. "Valeria's mom. I came to visit the children." "It's not a good time," he replied, without an ounce of shame. "We're busy." Behind him, I could see a piece of the house. Marble floors, elegant furniture, a crystal chandelier hanging from the ceiling, and in the back, I managed to see Valeria. She saw me too. Our gazes met for a second. I waited for her to say something, to tell Roberto to let me in, to run toward me with open arms like she used to when she was a child. But she just turned around and left. Roberto closed the door. I stood there, holding my pathetic gifts, feeling tears roll down my cheeks. A neighbor walking his dog looked at me with pity. That look was worse than rejection. It was confirmation that I was exactly what I appeared to be: a pathetic old woman, rejected by her own family. I returned home on the bus with the undelivered gifts. I stored them in my closet, where they still are, waiting for children who will never come looking for them. After that day, I stopped trying. Valeria's calls became even less frequent, a couple of times a year maybe, always brief, always superficial. "How are you, Mom?" "Fine. And you?" "Busy. Roberto has a new project. The kids are in 1,000 activities. I have to go. I'll call you soon. But soon never came. And still, I kept saving. The account grew. 30,000, 40,000, 50,000, 50,000. Each deposit was an act of faith or perhaps madness. At 82, living on a miserable pension, I kept depositing part of my money each month into that account that bore Valeria's name. Because in my will, which I had made years ago with a free lawyer from the parish, all that money was going to her, to my daughter, to the woman who had forgotten me, who had left me behind like an old piece of furniture that no longer matches the modern decoration of her life. Until 3 months ago, it was a morning like any other. I woke up with the usual joint pains. I made my tea. I sat at the table with my toast and jam, the cheap supermarket jam that tasted more like sugar than fruit. I turned on the radio and listened to the news while looking out the window at the world waking up. And then the phone rang. It was the bank. A young woman with a professional and slightly bored voice. Mrs. Elena Martinez. Yes, that's me. I'm calling from National Bank. We have a problem with your savings account. My heart skipped a beat. That money, all my money. The first thing I thought was that it had been stolen from me. Hackers, those things they talk about on the news. But no, it wasn't that. What kind of problem? I asked, my voice trembling. Well, you see, the woman cleared her throat. Uncomfortable. We've received a request to close the account and transfer all the funds. The person who made the request presented a power of attorney. A power of attorney? I repeated, confused. I haven't given any power of attorney. There was a pause that was too long. According to our records, you signed a power of attorney 2 years ago, granting your daughter Valeria Martinez de Torres complete access to this account. The world tilted. I had to grab onto the table to keep from falling out of my chair. That's not possible, I said. I never, but then I remembered. 2 years ago, Valeria had come to visit me. A surprise visit, the first in months. She arrived with flowers and a smile, and for a moment, just for a moment, I believed that maybe things were changing. Maybe my daughter had remembered she had a mother. Maybe time had softened her. We sat in the living room. She told me about the children, about how Sebastian was learning to play piano, about how Emma had won an award at school. I drank her words like someone who has been in the desert drinks water. I was so hungry for connection with her that I didn't pay attention to the signs. Mom, she said at some point, while we were having tea, I need you to sign some papers. Papers? I asked, my attention completely on her face, memorizing every detail as if she could disappear at any moment. Yes, they're just legal papers. Roberto says it's important that you organize your affairs. You know, at your age, she left the sentence hanging in the air. It's for your own good, to make sure that if something happens to you, everything is in order. Her face was one of concern. She seemed genuine. I wanted to believe her. I needed to believe her. So when she took the papers out of her elegant designer purse, when she put the pen in my trembling hand, I signed without reading. I signed because it was my daughter asking me to do it, and I had waited 2 years for her to visit me, and I wasn't going to ruin that moment by questioning her. How foolish I was. What a foolish and desperate old woman. Mrs. Martinez, the bankwoman's voice brought me back to the present. Are you there? Yes, I whispered. I'm here. Do you wish to proceed with canceling the request? We're still in time. We can block the transfer if you request it right now. I opened my mouth to say yes. That, of course, cancel that transfer. That was my money, the work of my entire life. But the words didn't come out. Because at that moment, looking at my empty kitchen, my lonely life, my wrinkled hands that trembled holding the phone, an idea appeared in my mind. A terrible and brilliant idea at the same time. How much is in the account? I asked instead. 52,000 pesos, ma'am. 52,000 pesos. 40 years of sacrifice, 40 years of unrequited love, 40 years converted into a number. And she can access all of that? With the power of attorney, yes. She can empty the account completely if she wishes. I closed my eyes. I saw my life pass like a fast-forwarded movie. I saw the young mother I was, full of hopes and dreams. I saw my husband, his smile, his calloused but gentle hands. I saw Valeria as a child, laughing as she ran through the garden chasing butterflies. I saw all the moments when I chose to love her, despite everything, again and again, even when she stopped choosing me. No, I said finally. Don't cancel anything. Are you sure? The woman sounded surprised. Completely sure. I hung up the phone and sat in the silence of my kitchen. The tea had cooled in the cup. The sun had changed position, creating new patterns of light on the worn floor, and I had made a decision. I wasn't going to stop her. I was going to let Valeria take the money. All of it. Every peso I had saved, because I had a plan. A plan that would make me seem like a crazy old woman, or perhaps the wisest of all women. Time would tell. For the next 3 months, I acted as if nothing had happened. I checked my bank account every week, waiting to see the movement. But Valeria hadn't touched the money yet. Maybe she was waiting for the right moment. Maybe she was planning something. It didn't matter. I had my own plan in motion. And then, this morning, the phone rang. Mom, I'm calling to let you know. We're leaving on a trip tomorrow. We used the money from your savings. Bye. And here we were. The money you used, I repeated into the phone, savoring the moment, actually wasn't for you, Valeria. Silence. A silence so deep I could hear my own heart beating. I could hear the wall clock. I could hear the refrigerator humming in the corner of the kitchen. I could hear the world holding its breath. What? Her voice was small now, uncertain. What are you talking about? That money, I continued. Each word clear and deliberate. I moved it 3 months ago. All of it. I moved it to another account. The account you emptied only had 1,000 pesos. Valeria, 1,000 pesos. I put there specifically for you. A lie. It was all a lie. The money was still there, in that account. The 52,000 pesos. She had taken them all, but Valeria didn't know that. And that uncertainty, that moment of doubt, was exactly what I needed. You're lying, she said. But her voice trembled. Why would I lie? I asked softly. For what? You already took the money, Valeria. You already did what you came to do. I heard noise on the other end of the line. Hurried footsteps. Roberto's voice in the background, asking what was happening. Valeria's voice, high-pitched and scared, telling him to wait. Mom, you can't have… When? Why? 3 months ago, I said. After you called me that Tuesday. Do you remember? You called me to ask if I had the deeds to the house. You said Roberto needed them for some paperwork. That night I couldn't sleep. Valeria. I stayed awake wondering what else you would come to take from me. Another lie. She had never called me asking about the deeds, but it sounded plausible. And in her guilt, in her panic, she wouldn't know how to distinguish truth from fiction. We weren't going to, she stammered. Do you know where the money is now? I asked. My voice had become soft, almost kind. That was the cruelest part of all. It's in a foundation for elderly people, without family, for people like me, Valeria, people whose children forgot them. I donated it all. Every peso. The scream she let out pierced my heart. It was a scream of pure anguish, of desperation. Part of me wanted to take it back, tell her the truth, calm her. But another part of me, the part that had been asleep for years, the part that had endured rejection and indifference in silence, that part remained firm. You can't have done that, she screamed. That money was mine. You promised it to me. You said it was for me. I never promised it to you, Valeria, I said quietly. You assumed, but you're right about something. It was for you. It was for when you really needed it, for an emergency, for something important, not for a pleasure trip you can clearly afford yourselves. You don't understand, her voice broke. We needed that money. Roberto, we lost a lot in an investment. We're in trouble, Mom, real trouble. The bank is going to take the house, the children's schools. We haven't paid for 3 months. This trip was our last chance to escape a little, to think about what to do. And there it was, the truth, or at least part of it. The perfect facade had cracked, and through the cracks I could see reality. They weren't the successful entrepreneurs they pretended to be. They were ordinary people with ordinary problems. And instead of coming to me honestly, Instead of asking for help as a daughter should ask her mother for help, they had decided to rob me. And why didn't you tell me? I asked. And now there were tears in my voice. Why didn't you come to me and say, Mom, we're in trouble, we need help, why did you have to steal it from me? Because I knew you'd say no, she shouted. I knew you'd give me a sermon about responsibility and wrong decisions. I knew you'd look at me with that disappointed face you always have when you see me. Her words hit me like stones. Was that what she saw in me? Disappointment? Maybe she was right. Maybe I had been unable to hide what I felt every time I saw her living a life I considered empty, chasing things I considered worthless. Valeria, I began, but she interrupted me. No, Mom. All my life you've been judging me, judging Marcos, judging Roberto, judging the house I have, the way I dress, how I raise my children. Nothing I do is enough for you. It never was. That's not true, I said, my voice breaking. I just wanted you to be happy, to have a good life. No, you wanted me to have the life you couldn't have. You wanted me to go to university to compensate for you not being able to go. You wanted me to be something great to feel that your sacrifice was worth it. Each word was a knife. Maybe because there was some truth in them. Maybe I had projected my unfulfilled dreams onto her. Maybe I had been as selfish as she accused me of being. I only loved you, I whispered. I only wanted the best for you. I know, her voice softened a bit, and for a moment, just for a fleeting moment, I could hear my little girl again. But your love weighed so much, Mom. It weighed like a slab on my chest. Every time I saw you, I felt guilty for not being what you wanted me to be. The silence stretched between us. A silence of 40 years of misunderstandings, of unspoken words, of hugs that were never given. So what do we do now? She finally asked. If you really donated the money, we're lost, Mom. Completely lost. I closed my eyes. This was the moment. The moment when I should tell her the truth. The moment when I should admit that I had lied, that the money was still there in her bank account, waiting for her, that she could use it, that it was hers if she really needed it. But I didn't. Come visit me, I said instead. You and Roberto, the children too. Come to my house, today, now. What? Why? Because I need to see you. I need you to look me in the eyes when we talk about this. My voice broke completely. I need to see my daughter, my grandchildren, even if it's once before I die. Don't be dramatic, Mom. You're not going to die. I'm 82 years old, Valeria. Every day I wake up as a gift, and I may not have many more. Another silence. I could hear her breathing. I could hear her thoughts working, calculating. Was it worth it? Was there anything more to gain by visiting me? Okay, she said finally. We'll go, in an hour. She hung up without saying goodbye. I sat with the phone in my hand, trembling from head to toe. What had I done? What was I planning to do? I got up from the table with difficulty. My knees protested. My back screamed at me, but I forced myself to move. I had an hour to prepare the house, an hour to prepare what I was going to say to her, an hour to change the course of our lives, or to completely destroy what little remained between us. I started cleaning. I wiped the table, even though it was already clean. I arranged the cushions on the old sofa. I took out photos of Valeria as a child. Those photos I kept in a box because it hurt too much to have them in view. I put them on the coffee table. Valeria with her first lost tooth, Valeria at her elementary school graduation, Valeria and I hugging in the park, both smiling at the camera as if there was nothing wrong in the world. When had everything broken? I put water on to boil for tea. I took out the last cookies I had left, put them on the good plate. I looked at myself in the hallway mirror. An old woman looked back at me. Completely white hair, pulled back in a bun, deep wrinkles around the eyes and mouth, each one telling a story of laughter or tears. Eyes still bright, still alive, though surrounded by fatigue. I changed clothes. I took off my old robe and put on a simple but clean dress, one of the few that still fit me well. I put on a little perfume, the bottle my husband had given me on our last anniversary together. There was almost none left, but I saved what little there was for special occasions. Was this a special occasion? My daughter was coming to visit me. Yes, but only because she thought I had destroyed her only hope of financial salvation. She was coming out of anger, out of desperation, not out of love. But she was coming. That was what mattered. I waited. The minutes dragged like years. I sat in my chair by the window, the same chair where I had spent so many nights waiting for her to call, to write, to remember me. I watched the street, waiting to see her car. And then I saw it. A big black car, though not as new as I remembered. It had dents I hadn't seen in photos. The paint was dull in some places. Another reminder that the facade of perfection they showed the world was cracking. They stopped in front of my house. I saw Roberto get out first, his jaw tense, his expression of barely contained fury, then Valeria, and my heart skipped a beat at seeing her. She was thinner than in the photos. She had dark circles under her eyes. Her clothes, though elegant, looked wrinkled, and her eyes were red from crying. In the back, 2 children. Sebastian, 10 years old, in his private school uniform and expensive backpack. Emma, 7, in a pink dress and her hair in perfect ponytails. Both looked confused, looking at my small house with a mixture of curiosity and something that hurt me to recognize disdain. They knocked on the door, 3 dry, impatient knocks. I got up slowly, very slowly. Each step toward that door was a step toward something unknown, toward a precipice from which there might be no return. I opened. Valeria was there, in front of me. My daughter, my girl, the woman she had become. Our gazes met, and in that moment I could see everything. The pain, the rage, the fear, but also, buried very deep, something more, something that resembled love, or at least the memory of love. "Hello, Mom," she said, and her voice was so small, so fragile. "Hello, my love," I replied, and tears began to roll down my cheeks without permission. Roberto gently pushed me aside to enter. He didn't say hello. He didn't look me in the eyes. The children entered behind him, stuck to their father, looking at me as if I were a stranger, because that was exactly what I was to them. A stranger. Valeria entered last. I closed the door behind her, and we stood in the small foyer, separated by barely a meter that felt like an ocean. "So," said Roberto from the living room, his voice cutting, "where are the papers? The papers from that supposed donation you made?" And there it was. The moment of truth. The moment when I should show my cards, reveal my lie, or continue with the game I had started. I went to my room, feeling their eyes on my back. I opened the drawer of my dresser, the drawer where I kept my important documents, the deeds to the house, my will, my husband's death certificate, Valeria's birth certificates. And under everything, an envelope I had prepared 3 months ago, after that call from the bank. I took it with trembling hands and returned to the living room. Roberto was sitting on my sofa, as if he owned the place. Sebastian and Emma were beside him, playing with their expensive phones. Valeria was standing by the window, looking outside, her arms crossed over her chest in a defensive posture. I handed the envelope to Roberto. He opened it roughly, pulled out the papers. His eyes scanned the pages quickly. I saw how his face went from fury to confusion, and then to something worse, total desperation. "What is this?" he whispered. Valeria turned from the window. "What does it say?" Roberto looked up at me, and in his eyes there was something I had never seen before, respect, or maybe fear. "They're transfer papers," he said slowly. "Transfer of the 52,000 pesos to the Golden Hope Foundation. They're signed and notarized. 3 months ago, like she said." Valeria let out a sound, something between a moan and a scream. She brought her hands to her face. No, Mom, how could you?" "Sit down, Valeria," I said softly. "Everyone, sit down. We need to talk." "There's nothing to talk about," she screamed. "You've destroyed us, do you understand? You've killed us." "Valeria." Roberto's voice was tired. "Sit down." She did, collapsing on the sofa, as if her legs could no longer hold her. The children looked at her with concern, finally leaving their phones. "Grandma," said Emma, her little voice full of uncertainty. "Why is Mommy crying?" My heart stopped. Grandma. She had called me Grandma. Maybe she didn't really know who I was. Maybe it was just a word she had heard. but she had said it, and that sound, that simple word, almost made me collapse. "Come here, my love," I said, extending my hand. She looked at her father, asking permission. He nodded, his face a mask of resignation. Emma walked toward me with small, cautious steps. When she was close enough, I took her little hand in mine. "Your mommy is crying," I said softly, "because sometimes adults make mistakes, and when we realize our mistakes, we get sad." "Did you make a mistake?" she asked, her big, curious eyes looking at me. "Yes," I replied, looking at Valeria as I spoke. "I made many mistakes. I was a mother who loved too much, who squeezed too hard, who didn't know when to let go." "And I," said Valeria. Her voice broken, was a daughter who didn't know how to appreciate that love, who confused it with control, who ran away instead of facing things. We looked at each other across the room, and in that moment, something broke, or maybe it was fixed. It was hard to tell. "The papers are fake," I said finally. Absolute silence. "What?" Roberto was the first to speak. "The papers. They're fake. I made them myself. I never donated the money. It's still in the account. All of it. Every peso." Valeria stood up abruptly. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying," and my voice was firm now, firmer than it had been in years, "that I lied. When you called me this morning, so casual, so cold, telling me you had taken my life savings as if you had the right to do so, I decided to teach you a lesson." "A lesson?" Roberto's voice was incredulous. "You put us through this as a fucking lesson?" "Roberto," Valeria's voice was a warning. She looked at the children. "Yes," I said, unfazed. "A lesson, because you needed to understand something. You needed to feel what I've felt for years." "And what is that?" asked Valeria, her voice trembling. "Loss. Desperation. The feeling that what you valued most in the world has been taken from you without your permission, without your knowledge, by someone who is supposed to love you." The words fell like bombs in the room. Valeria collapsed back on the sofa, her face in her hands. Roberto stared into space, processing. The children looked at us all with enormous eyes, trying to understand the adult drama unfolding before them. "I didn't take anything from you, Mom," said Valeria finally, her voice muffled by her hands. "Didn't you? Didn't you take your presents from me? Your love? My grandchildren? Didn't you steal years of being a grandmother, of being part of your life, of feeling like I still mattered to someone? But you," she lifted her head, her eyes full of tears, "you made me feel bad. Every time I saw you, I could feel your disappointment. I could feel how you judged me. And you made me feel invisible," I replied, my own voice breaking, "as if I were a mistake in your perfect life. Something to be ashamed of." "I was never ashamed of you." "No? Then why at Roberto's wedding did you seat me in the back? Why did you never introduce me to your friends? Why, when I went to your house 3 years ago, did you close the door in my face?" "I didn't close the door on you. It was Roberto. And you let him. You turned around and left. You saw me standing there with gifts for your children, humiliated, rejected, and you turned around." Valeria was crying openly now, deep sobs that shook her entire body. "I'm sorry," she said through tears. "I'm so sorry, Mom. I was afraid." "Afraid of what?" "That if I let you in, if I let you be part of our lives, you would lose control again. That you would want to make all the decisions. That you would make me feel again like when I was a teenager, and everything I did was wrong." I approached her. My knees screamed in protest, but I didn't care. I knelt in front of my daughter, took her hands in mine. "Valeria, my love, my beautiful girl, I never wanted to control your life. I only wanted to protect you. But I did it wrong. I know that now. I was too hard, too critical. I didn't know how to celebrate your victories because I was too worried about your possible falls. And I," she said, her fingers squeezing mine, "was too proud, too stubborn. I cut off all communication because it was easier than facing things, and in the process I took everything from you. I took a mother away from myself. I took a grandmother away from my children." We stayed like that, kneeling on the floor of my old living room, crying together for the first time in decades. Sebastian approached timidly. "Mom," he said, "is Grandma okay?" Valeria and I looked at each other, and miraculously started laughing through the tears. "Yes, my love," said Valeria. "Grandma is fine. We're fine." So, Roberto cleared his throat, still processing everything. "The money is there? Really?" I looked at him. This man who had been a barrier between my daughter and me. This man who had closed the door in my face. And I saw, surprisingly, that he also had tears in his eyes. "Yes," I said. "It's there. All 52,000 pesos, and you can use it." "We can't," Valeria began. "Yes, you can. It's what I saved it for when you really needed it, and clearly you need it now." "But we behaved terribly toward you," she said. "We don't deserve. A mother's love is not something you earn or deserve. Valeria, it simply is. Despite everything, despite the mistakes, despite the lost years, it simply is." Roberto stood up and walked toward us. He crouched down, getting to our level. "Elena," he said, and it was the first time he called me by my name. "I need to apologize. I've been an idiot. I've kept Valeria away from you. I thought you were a bad influence, that you were somehow less than us. But I was wrong, terribly wrong." I looked him in the eyes. I saw sincerity there. I saw shame. I saw regret. "We all make mistakes," I said softly. "What matters is what we do after recognizing them." The children, seeing that the tension had decreased, approached too. Emma climbed onto my lap, something she did without thinking, with the naturalness of a child who trusts. Sebastian sat next to his mother, his hand finding hers. "Grandma," said Emma, "why is your house so small?" Valeria scolded her. "No, it's okay," I said, laughing softly. "It's a valid question. My house is small because it's all I need, and because all my money, everything I could have spent on a bigger house, I saved for your mommy, for you, for us." Sebastian seemed genuinely surprised. "Of course, you are my family, my blood, and family takes care of family. But we never took care of you," he said, and there was a wisdom in his words that broke my heart. "You can start now," I said simply. Valeria looked at me, hope shining in her eyes. Can we really start over?" "I don't know if we can start over," I said honestly, "but we can start from here. From this moment, we can build something new." "I would like that," she whispered. "I would like that very much." Roberto stood up. "Then let's do it," he said, his voice firm. "And Elena, I want you to know that we're going to pay you back every peso over time. But we'll pay you back." "No," I said, shaking my head. "The money is a gift, not a loan. It's what I wanted to do with it from the beginning. But, no buts, use it to save your house, to keep the children in their schools, to give yourselves a break and find a way to get back on your feet. And when you're stable, when everything is well again, I only ask one thing of you." "What?" asked Valeria. "That you come visit me. Regularly. That you let me be a grandmother. That you let me be part of your lives. That's all I want. It's all I've ever wanted." "Teal," she said, smiling through tears. "It's a deal, Mom." We hugged there, on the floor of my old living room, one of those hugs that last, one of those that mean something. The children joined in, and then Roberto, a messy group of people hugging on the floor, crying and laughing at the same time. And for the first time in years, in decades perhaps, I felt something I had forgotten. Hope. We spent the rest of the day together. I showed the children the house. I showed them photos of their mommy as a child. I told them stories of when Valeria was their age. I showed them the toys I had saved, those gifts I was never able to deliver. Emma's eyes lit up when she saw the rag doll I had made by hand. Sebastian was fascinated with the carved wooden cars I had painted myself. We cooked together. Well, I cooked with Valeria's help, while Roberto played with the children in the small backyard. I made my special soup, the one I used to make when Valeria was a child, the kitchen filled with steam and laughter. Valeria cut vegetables beside me, and every now and then our hands brushed, a reminder that this was real, that it was really happening. "I had forgotten this smell," she said at some point, closing her eyes. "I used to come home from school, and this smell filled the whole house. It made me feel safe, loved. You were always loved, my girl. Even when it seemed you weren't, even when we fought, always." We ate at the small table, squeezed but happy. Emma insisted on sitting in my lap. Sebastian asked 1,000 questions about my life, about his grandfather he never knew, about what the world was like when I was young. Roberto ate 3 plates, praising the food, and I could see in Valeria's eyes a mixture of surprise and joy seeing her family connect with me. After eating, while Roberto took the children to buy ice cream at the corner store, Valeria and I were left alone. We sat on the sofa, with cups of hot tea in our hands, in a comfortable silence we hadn't shared in years. "Mom," she said finally, "I need to know something." "What, my love?" "When you made those fake papers, when you let me believe you had donated the money, were you really willing to lose it all? To lose me forever?" I looked her in the eyes. It was a fair question, a question that deserved an honest answer. "I don't know," I admitted. "I think in that moment when I picked up the phone this morning and heard your voice so cold, so casual, telling me you had taken my savings, something in me broke, or maybe it was fixed. I felt like I had nothing left to lose. That I had lost you so long ago that it no longer mattered. So yes, I think I was willing to risk everything for a chance, however small, that you would really see me, that you would feel something, even if it was anger or pain. Because feeling something was better than the indifference you had treated me with for years." She nodded slowly, processing my words. "It was cruel," she said. "It was," I agreed. "And I'm sorry, but it was also effective." "Yes." A small smile appeared on her lips. "It was. Valeria, there's something else I need to tell you." "What?" "I changed my will 3 months ago, after that call from the bank." Her face paled. "Mom, you don't have to." "Listen," I interrupted her gently. "Everything I have, this house, my few possessions, everything goes to you. But with one condition." "What?" "That you don't sell it, that you don't turn it into an investment or quick cash, that you keep it in the family. That maybe someday when your children have their own children, they can bring them here. They can tell them stories of their great-grandmother. They can keep alive the memory that here, in this small and humble house, there was love. A lot of love." Tears rolled down her cheeks again. "I promise," she whispered. "I promise you, Mom." The door opened, and the children entered like a whirlwind, with ice cream in their hands and smiles on their faces. Emma ran toward me, almost spilling her ice cream in the process. "Grandma, Dad says we can come next Sunday. Can we? Will you teach me to sew like the doll you made?" "Of course, my love," I said, wiping a bit of ice cream from her nose. "We can do whatever you want." "And can I learn to carve wood?" asked Sebastian. "Like the cars you showed us." "Of course. Your grandfather was the best wood carver. I'll teach you everything he taught me." Roberto put a hand on my shoulder, a simple gesture but loaded with meaning. "Thank you, Elena," he said. "For everything. For the money, yes, but more than that, for not giving up on us, for fighting even when we didn't deserve it." "Families fight," I said simply. "It's what we do. We fight for ourselves, sometimes even against ourselves. But in the end, what matters is that we remain family." The sun was beginning to set when they finally prepared to leave. It had been a long, emotional, exhausting day, but it had also been the best day I'd had in years. Valeria hugged me at the door, a long, tight hug. "I love you, Mom," she whispered in my ear. "I'm sorry it took me so long to say it again. I love you too, my girl. I always did. I always will." "Next Sunday," she said. "I'll come early. Just me. We can have breakfast together, like we used to." "I would love that." I watched them drive away in their car, Emma waving furiously from the back window. I stayed at the door until they disappeared from my sight, then closed and leaned against the wood, exhausted but happy. My house felt different now. The same old furniture, the same worn walls, but there was something new in the air. Hope, promise, future. I poured myself another cup of tea and sat in my chair by the window. The city stretched out before me, the lights beginning to turn on one by one as night fell. Somewhere out there, my daughter was driving home with her family. My family. And tomorrow I would have to go to the bank. I would have to sign the papers so Valeria could access the money. I would have to make official what I had already promised, but that was for tomorrow. Tonight, I just wanted to sit here and savor this moment. this perfect and imperfect day, this day when I almost lost everything, and instead won everything back. The phone rang. I looked at it, my heart giving a little leap. Would it be her again? Had she already changed her mind? But when I answered, it was her voice, warm and soft. Mom, I just wanted to tell you we got home safely, and that, thank you, for everything, for giving us another chance. Don't thank me, my love. Thank you for accepting it. The kids won't stop talking about you. Emma is already planning everything you're going to sew together. Sebastian got a book from the library about carpentry. I smiled, feeling my heart expand in my chest. Tell them I'm waiting for them. And Valeria, about the money. Tomorrow I'll go to the bank at 10. Can you come with me? I'd like us to be together when we make the transfer. I'll be there, Mom. I promise. I know. There was a pause, and then, I love you, Mom. See you tomorrow. See you tomorrow, my girl. I love you too. I hung up the phone and held it against my chest for a moment, letting the tears of happiness roll freely down my cheeks. 40 years of saving, 40 years of sacrifice. And in the end, I hadn't bought a bigger house, or a luxurious vacation, or comforts for my old age. I had bought something much more valuable. I had bought back my family. I had bought a second chance for love. The money would be gone tomorrow. The 52,000 pesos would pass into Valeria's hands, and she would use them to save her house, to keep her children in school, to give her family the respite they needed, and eventually that money would run out. As all money runs out. But what we had built today, what we had recovered, that was permanent, that was real. I got up from my chair with effort, my bones creaking but my heart light. I washed my teacup, turned off the lights one by one and headed to my bedroom. On the nightstand was an old photo, faded by time. My husband and me on our wedding day, young and full of hope. I touched his face with a wrinkled finger. I did it, I whispered to him. I got our girl back. I wish you were here to see it. I got into bed, between the clean sheets I had washed that morning, before all this began, before knowing this would be the day my life would change forever. I closed my eyes and for the first time in years, I fell asleep with a smile on my lips. Because tomorrow Valeria would come, and the following Sunday, and every Sunday after that, the 52,000 pesos would be gone, but my daughter would have returned. My grandchildren would know me. This small house would once again be filled with laughter. In the end, I had won everything that mattered. And as I sank into sleep, one last thought crossed my mind. Sometimes you have to be willing to lose everything to realize what's really worth keeping, and it's not money. It was never money. It was always love. The end.